Hi everyone, I'm working here on a big update for Banapi and would like to tell a little bit about it. What is Banapi? Banapi is such an app that I created for the generation and editing of images using artificial intelligence models from Google. Currently, it is possible to work only with models from Google, but in the future I have plans to add some other models. Banapi works on the basis of nodes, which is much more convenient, as it seems to me, than generating images in a chat. Besides, it is much faster. For a start, nothing needs to be done. You can use the Sandbox Mode, which is built in here, and just play around and see how it works. It is turned on by default, but here in the settings you can check it. I need to enter some prompt. Here I can choose the aspect ratio that I need, and here's some photo model, and press generation. And I get a simulation of generation, which I can open with a double click and look at. Next, I can take this image and connect it to another node, write some prompt and get another image. Next, I can select these two images. I can create a node with this button, connect these images. Or I can select these two images, press the button, and they will automatically connect to the node. Well, and so on. Actually, this is the Sandbox mode. To actually start generating images, some actions need to be performed. The thing is that this app works on the bring your keys principle. In other words, the user must enter in the settings in this field his API key, which will give him access to Google models, and after entering these keys, the user will be able to generate images. The user pays me nothing, because he uses his own Google account for generation. How to do it? Right here in the settings, there is a link to Google AI Studio, where keys need to be configured. Besides, right here, there is a link to a short video lesson, which very quickly and clearly shows how to configure these API keys. It is very simple and very fast. There is nothing complicated there. When we go to Google AI Studio, you need to go to Projects, press Create New Project. Now, a new project will be created, and then an API key needs to be created and connected to this project. We go to the API keys section, press this button and write temp, any name absolutely. And right here, you need to choose that project to which we want to connect this key. After this, billing needs to be configured. This is done very simply. You just need to fill in those fields that Google wants you to fill in, enter your card data, show your location, and that's it. I have billing configured on another account, so I'm just showing this for demonstration. Next, we click on our key and copy it. You need to return to Banapi, paste it here, and press Save Changes. We will see that there was a yellow light here, it became green, and now we can generate. Actually, I cannot, because billing is not configured here for me, and I have a free tier account on this account, and it will become tier 1 after configuring billing. Although the only such small life hack, on a free tier account, Google gives free access to this text model, so if I write something to it, then I hope it will give me some answer. But unfortunately, it is impossible to generate images. We get such an error, which will say that, well, it's about the quota. Another account needs to be used. By the way, if some error happens on a photo node, that is, generation is considered unsuccessful, then there is a built-in timer here, after which this node will just self-destruct. So after we entered our API keys, it's possible to generate something interesting. Now I will open a prepared demonstration file. Here I have a regular prompt node, and such a prompt, create a realistic capybara Einstein scientist who is inventing a high-tech bananas in a sci-fi laboratory cinematic Back to the Future movie style. Okay, next I choose the aspect ratio and the model. Well, for example, I'll take this newest one. It generates more or less fast. 1000 image size suits me, and I press generation. Generation lasts on average from 10 to 30 seconds, depending on the size, first of all, which is used, and also on the model. Flash model generates faster. Here we received our first image. We can look at it in more detail with a double click. Next, we see such a badge here on which there is that model that we used, its size, aspect ratio, and how long the generation lasted. Obviously, there is an error here because I asked for only one scientist and not two. Therefore, I can further do the following. I can connect this image to the next node and ask to remove one of the character. Hoping that the model will delete one of the characters. I can launch one more generation, and also I can choose another aspect ratio and launch one more. In this way, I will receive several variants without waiting for the first one to finish. The generation is successful. He took away one of the characters, yes? Here are 3 successful generations. I can move between them with a double click. Right here, I generated 0.5K, it generated for 10 seconds. And these 1K, 17 seconds. Next, I can add images that I like to favorites. Those that I don't like, I can just delete or make them ghosts. This is so that they don't attract too much attention to themselves in the canvas. What else I can do? I can connect this image to the next node, forming our tree, and turn to some text model, for example, to this one, and ask that it gives us a prompt. Based on the connected image, the text model will look at it and generate a prompt that we will be able to use for the generation of a new image. Moreover, the prompt will be detailed. Besides, I can ask for a prompt in JSON format. Next, I can connect this prompt to the next node, choose some model, change the aspect ratio, and generate a new image. In the same way, I can act with a JSON prompt, for example. We get another image, but by description, the plot is the same. Although sometimes with errors. Each node has a set of some functions. Right here, there are such buttons. For example, it's possible to change their color. This button aligns the whole tree. That is, everything that is below the chosen node, and we will get a normal tree. If, for example, I move this one here, then for me, it will look like this. In the same way, I can do with any. The photo node has one more possibility to draw something. And then I can give this image to a prompt node and ask to do something with the selected place. Or I can, for example, make a crop of that place which interests me and ask there to make an upscale. Besides, it is possible to create as many projects as you want. The canvas, it is infinite, and here there can be very many nodes within the framework of one project. This project can be saved. Open a saved one. Right here, in the help, it is possible to find all hotkeys, which are used in the program. Besides, there are some small pro tips. Here are my contacts and a link to the Telegram group, which I created recently, and everyone who wishes can join it, ask a question, or write feedback. Besides, there is also right here a cost calculator. which counts the spent tokens, and accordingly the funds relative to a specific project. At the moment, we spent 40 cents on the generation of these 7 images. Here, everything is described in detail. Using hotkeys is very convenient. Practically for all functions of Banapi, there is its own hotkey. For example, I can align this tree by pressing this button or simply by pressing A, and so I can do with any node. If I press this button, or P, then I will pin the branch that is located below this node, and during alignment, this branch will be ignored. Next, I can add to favorites by pressing this button, or to ghosts, or use hotkeys F, G. I can select 2 nodes simultaneously with Control and press the button, Compare, or I can press the hotkey C. All hotkeys are described in the context menu. In principle, everything is very simple. This new model from Google 3.1 Flash, or it's called Nano Banana 2. It's interesting because besides supporting images of 512 pixel size, which are generated fast and are very cheap, it also supports non-standard aspect ratios. These images are strongly stretched horizontally or vertically. But on the canvas, I limit these images to the size of the node so that they don't take up much extra space. Here we received some error related to censorship. Possible to try launching generation one more time. But if the image is bigger than the node size, then on such a node there are these marks vertical or horizontal. And with a double click in the light box, you can look at this image whole. It was only during the editing process that I realized I had completely forgotten to tell you about the voice prompt input feature. To use it, you simply need to activate this microphone. But first, you must go into the settings and select the specific language you intend to speak. I've included 10 primary languages for your convenience. And if I switch on my microphone, then I sincerely hope it will provide text recognition. Regrettably, this isn't artificial intelligence-driven text recognition. Instead, it's just a standard feature integrated directly into the browser. Furthermore, the microphone will automatically activate for the node that the user makes active. At this very moment, this node is listening to me. However, it ceases to listen for input when the node is inactive. Therefore, this mode can, in principle, be kept active without switching it off. And if you need to enter a prompt, you simply need to make it active. By the way, prompts can be entered in any language. It doesn't necessarily have to be English, as it is in this demo video. For example, I almost always use Ukrainian for my prompts. Well, now possible to move to the most interesting. This project is now in beta. It is absolutely free and open for everyone. And I am the only one who is working on it. When I find an opportunity, I introduce some changes and improvements here. But actually, I'll be honest, I would like to try in the future to monetize it in some way. Introducing a small subscription for access to some functions that are in Banapi. I certainly don't know if the project will become successful and needed, although I would like this very much. Well, and therefore generally in principle, it is unknown whether I will manage to exit from beta into release. In Banapi, another node has appeared, which will come out with the new release. By the way, to follow all updates is possible in Dev Notes. All updates are described here, and actually this big update, on which I'm working now, and hope it will soon come out in release. And so this node, it is called ARIA. This is an agent node. ARIA stands for Art, Reasoning, and Intelligent Agent. Its purpose is to automate all this routine that an AI artist does himself. That is, he generates an image, looks at it, corrects errors, introduces changes, every time writes some prompt. ARIA, the purpose of ARIA is exactly actually to automate this whole process. This, one can say, is both artist and art director in one person, which, after fulfilling the task, will give the user the final result. To get access to ARIA, the only thing required from the user is to register with a Google account. This can be done right here or through a personal account. It's simply needed to enter your email and that's it. All data, all canvases, all projects are stored in your browser locally. I see nothing as a developer from what you do here. And all the more, I don't have any access to your keys because this is also stored locally. If you clear the temps of your browser or open Banapi in another browser, everywhere will be empty, like here, so and here. By the way, if some incredible miracle happens and Banapi becomes a successful project, then to all beta testers, I promise to offer some pleasant bonuses. ARIA looks like this. It is a little bigger than a usual node, and it has a little more settings, but actually everything is simple. This node has simultaneous access to a text model and to a photo model. Its task, as an agent node, is to replace the manual work of an artist in creating images and then editing them. After the user has written some brief and launched this node, the text model studies this detailed brief and breaks it down into a certain number of tasks. And then it sends each of these tasks for image generation to the photo model. After creating the image, a review of this image takes place for compliance with the brief, and the model itself decides whether the created image corresponds to the brief or not. If it does not, and it has found some error, then regeneration is launched. The number of such reviews is regulated by this setting. In such a mode, the first generated image will also be the final one. And in this one, a maximum of 3 reviews will be conducted, if that is necessary. And let us move on to the examples. The first example I have is this. I have such a character, Don Capybara, and with this prompt, I ask to create 3 more anthropomorphic mafia characters based on this character. These are a penguin, a lynx, and an axolotl. I ask to leave the pose exactly the same as Don Capybara has, but to change the locations and also to dress all the characters in different clothes. And the lynx must be a lady in an elegant black dress. I will select the 3 flash text model and the 3 1 flash photo model, and for this example, I will turn on the maximum number of reviews. I will launch the generation. A log appears in which every step of the cycle that ARIA performs will be visible. And at the first stage, this model reads the brief and breaks it down into a certain number of tasks. We see that 3 tasks have been created, and now the generation of the first task has launched. This must be a mafia penguin. Such a character turned out, a different location, different clothes, and the same pose, and the reviewer looked at this image, checked for compliance with the brief, and said that everything is fine here. Simultaneously, the second generation launched, the Lady Lynx. The Lady Lynx is in the same pose, in a black dress. Well, and the location is basically different, although that is a debatable question. But the reviewer said that everything is also fine. The third and final generation launched. This will be the axolotl. The axolotl also turned out in a different location, in a different suit. Therefore, obviously, the reviewer said that everything is also fine here. And on this, the cycle ended. With another example, I want to show how it is possible to change the style of the original image with the help of a reference. I will connect this reference here too. It receives sequence number 2, and also such a small prompt where I ask to change the mood and light to be more cinematic, like on reference 2. I could have simply inserted this prompt here into the node, or it is possible, for example, to insert any text onto the canvas. It will be like a text node and connect to the generation node. And so we want the same 3 certain characters, but in such a style. Let us launch the generation. I will speed up the video, then we will look at the result. And so we received such 3 images. Again, in the opinion of the reviewer, there were no errors, and all images correspond to the brief. Therefore, there were no regenerations. By the way, right here in the log, it is possible to see how much time the work of the agent node takes. The second example I have is this time without a reference, just a prompt. With this prompt, I ask to create an anthropomorphic capybara astronaut character in a spacesuit. And on one image 4x3 to display him in full length and also a portrait. And then I ask to use this character to create 5 cinematic frames from a 21:9 movie in the style of the movie Gravity, where this character is the main hero. And these frames must tell some story and also take place both inside the space station and outside. I will use the same models and reviewer, and I will launch the generation. That is, this task is more difficult than the previous one because it has 2 layers. On the first layer, it is necessary to create a character, and then on the second layer, it is exactly this character that must be used to create 5 frames from the movie. And the task of ARIA is to control the correspondence of the character from the concept to the characters on the next frames. And now the agent understood that it has 6 tasks in line and launched the first of them. We got such a concept in full length and close up, and the reviewer said that everything is fine here, and launched the generation of the first frame from the movie, where this capybara must be the main hero. Perhaps I will sometimes speed up the video to save time. Here is such a frame, and the suit seems to correspond to the concept. The reviewer also liked everything in principle. The next frame is in line. By the way, after the image is generated and the reviewer turns on, and, for example, the result satisfies the user, then this review can be skipped with this button. Well, but I will not do this at the moment. The next frame. It seems the character is again the same, but the reviewer did not like something. It did not like this reflection here. Well, of course, this is a text model from Google working. And like any AI agent, it can make mistakes. This seemed strange to it. Therefore, with the next generation, it practically removed this reflection. The next generation is launched. Our capybara is an open space. The reviewer liked everything. Well, I also like everything. The suit seems to be the same, the character is the same. The next frame turned out like this. Here I also see this reflection. It is interesting whether this will satisfy ARIA. Yes, this time everything is fine. Well, and the last frame on which there is clearly an error, the nose protrudes beyond the limits of this helmet. ARIA unfortunately did not notice this. Additionally, there is such a mode here, which is called human in the loop control. With the help of it, it is possible to ask ARIA to correct some errors that she did not see. Well, I will not invent much here, I will simply ask. But actually, this mode is still very raw. I have not spent much time on it, therefore there can be errors here. Having pressed regenerate, I actually do not know if there will be a regeneration of exactly this image, or if ARIA will invent some other prompt, or if she will simply generate the same thing. I did not spend much time on creating this mode, therefore perhaps later I will finish it. Well, actually, we saw what happened. Just a regeneration of the same image, and the error is not corrected. This can be corrected by launching another agent or a usual prompt node and asking to correct this error. Theoretically, the result of the review will be better if a more powerful model is selected. For example, this one. It will perhaps notice more errors that are in the results and will try to correct them. But the problem is that this is not necessarily so. It can also make mistakes in some small details. And secondly, this model costs more. It is necessary to understand that the work of the agent adds a small amount to the cost of creating images. If you use, for example, a Flash model, then this is approximately, according to my calculations, approximately plus 10%. Well, this is actually very little, but, for example, if you use the Pro model, then this will add, of course, a little more. This newest model from Google, 3.1 flashlight, it is very cheap, very fast, but at the same time, correspondingly, it is also the least smart of these models of the third series. I am not even talking about 2.5 flash, it is even less smart. In the third test, I ask ARIA to create a Dr. Capybara character who will be a mascot for a veterinary clinic. After this, I ask to create a vertical advertising illustration for this clinic, where our character will be helping another animal. Also, I ask to invent a name for this clinic and a logo. And at the end, I ask to create a photograph that shows the entrance from the street into this clinic. And nearby, a woman with a dog. Also on the window of this clinic, I ask to show our illustration. This time, I will turn off the reviewer and launch the generation. Let us look at the result. The generation has finished in 1 minute and 2 seconds. By the way, this task is more difficult than the previous one because obviously there are 3 layers here. It is necessary on the first layer to create a character, then use him for a poster, and then use this poster on a photograph. The result turned out quite not bad. There is a logo and the name of the clinic, and everything as I asked in the brief. By the way, the result depends on the words in the prompt. For example, if I write here simply image instead of realistic photograph and launch the test anew, I will turn on 0.5K. It will be faster that way. Then most likely this image will be in the style of these two. ARIA will try to keep the style of all tasks the same, since I did not ask otherwise. Right here, while the agent is working, the number of agents that are launched is displayed. Right now, a purple number 1 is lit up. If I simultaneously launch a prompt node, then here will be one purple and one blue. Or that number, how many nodes are working right now? Well, here, we now see a different result. And the last image, it is actually in the style of the previous two, because I did not ask otherwise. The last test, on which there will be no capybaras, these are screenshots from 3ds Max of my old project. It is simply some cottage and several interior frames, and also such a reference. With the help of the prompt, I ask to make professional architectural photos of magazine quality from these screenshots. I ask to ignore the color of the walls. They must all be white. Also, I ask to use reference number 5 as a guide for the light and style of these images. This is a cottage in Ireland, and the weather is gloomy. And on the exterior frame, I ask to add a large tree on the left to place a modern car on the right. Also, I ask not to change any architectural details. And I ask that all images be in one light style. I can try the Pro model for this test, and I will turn on 2 levels of review just in case. I will launch the generation. The generation has finished. This took 2.5 minutes, and we received such a result. The reviewer did not work on regeneration a single time. Quite high quality images, all in one style. The only thing I see here is an error. On my screenshot, there is not this second window. But in general, this looks not bad. Another error. On this image, the composition of the frame has changed. Although in principle, I did not ask for this with the prompt, perhaps it was necessary to add not to change the composition. But nevertheless, here is such a quite not bad result. Well, and for an experiment, I still have such a reference. It is possible to look at how these frames will change if such an interior is used. It is necessary to slightly change the prompt. Probably this needs to be deleted. And here to write, moody dark style. And I will turn off the reviewer to save time. And I will turn on the 0.5K image size. I will launch the agent again, and we will look at what comes out of this. Well, and we received such images. I am not sure that they please me, but nevertheless the style is absolutely different. And towards the end, I also want to show several capabilities of Banapi. By holding Control, I can highlight any number of nodes. From the context menu with the right mouse button, I can add them to a group. Or I can do the same thing with the help of the hotkey Control G. In the context menu, all hotkeys are written out. In a group, I can change the color. Also, if nodes are outside the boundaries of a group, I can bring them in either like this, or by moving the group under the node, or I can do it like this. Besides that, I can highlight all nodes and press Ctrl+C. Then right here will be the status of copying nodes and transfer them, for example, to another project. I can do this one more time, transfer here, and repeatedly do it one more time, transfer right here. I can press the hotkey A, or from the context menu, Auto Layout, or use this button, so that they all line up evenly. As I already said earlier, images that please me, I can add to favorites with the hotkey F, or through the context menu, or with the help of this button, or to ghost mode with the help of the hotkey G. Also in Banapi, there is a gallery in which it is possible to review all generated images. Those images that the user brought from the outside onto the canvas, they do not get into the gallery. Only generated images are displayed here. In the gallery, I can review them in a lightbox. Also, I can similarly add to favorites, copy, download the image. I can draw something on it, exactly the same as in the node. Or with this button, I can go to this image on the canvas in order to, for example, continue to work with it or download it. Besides that, I can download a group of images at once that pleased me, having highlighted them and having pressed Ctrl+S. Here, I can set some name and their own sequence number will automatically be added to them and they will be saved into a general archive file, which is very convenient. Well, and of course, I can save the entire project in order to open it later, either at another computer or in another browser. For this, it is necessary to use these buttons. A special file with the extension .banapi will be created. But actually, this is a usual zip archive, simply with a cheerful name. At the given moment, Banapi and ARIA are in beta, although ARIA even now is working already, as it seems to me, quite not bad. But I very much hope that with the help of feedback from users, I will manage to improve her work even more. Actually, it is quite difficult for one person to invent many different tests to check the capabilities of ARIA. Therefore, I hope that users who will use Banapi will help me in this. Regarding the nearest plans in development, I already have several ideas. For example, one of them is to create different presets for different tasks. At present, there is only one art director. That is, at the given moment, ARIA is such a global specialist in any sphere of art. But I think that it is possible to improve her work by creating separate presets for different tasks. For example, a cinematic preset or a preset for creating some branding or a preset for ArchViz and things like that. Additionally, I plan to create one more custom preset, which the user himself would be able to edit. Also, it is possible to speed up the work of ARIA a little, for example, by launching simultaneous generations in those tasks in which each next step does not depend on the previous one, like in this example, or, for example, in this one. This will not affect the cost of generation in any way, but will noticeably reduce the speed of the agent's work. Also, in the future, of course, I will try to add access via API to other artificial intelligence models. For example, to ChatGPT or to some other interesting and inexpensive models. And then ARIA could be a kind of hybrid in which ChatGPT acts as a text model and the image is generated, for example, by that same nano banana. That concludes everything for now. It would be truly wonderful if you could share your valuable feedback about your experience using Banapi in general and ARIA in particular. It is extremely important for me to hear your thoughts. I warmly invite all of you to join our Telegram group. Please write down your thoughts and impressions, feel free to ask any questions or suggest any ideas for its improvement, and do report if you happen to find any bugs. Your feedback will greatly assist me in the further development of this project. So please test it out and generate content, and thank you so much for your valuable time.